Hey everybody, this is my long-term review of my 2017 Honda CRF 1000 Africa Twin. So, what's happening is unfortunately I had an accident on this bike about 2 months ago. A fella pulled a U-turn in front of me and I had somewhat really nowhere to go. So the bike impacted on the front wheel and actually hit so hard that it ended up creasing the frame in two spots here. So it's basically an automatic write-off. The insurance company wasn't going to try to fix it or anything like that. So what I'll do is I'm just going to do a honest review. Owned the bike since 2017 winter. I didn't put any kilometers on it. As it stands, it has 33K on it, kilometers, not miles. There it is, 32.9. Anyways, made a list of what I liked about the bike, what I didn't like, and then also what I'll do is I'll talk about the replacement for the AT a little bit later since it's here as well. So, my very good points on the bike. Oh yeah, real quick, type of riding that I do. I'm an average rider. I like to say that I ride with faster guys and I ride with slower guys. I typically ride at a decent clip on gravel, quad trails, that kind of thing. And the AT actually does that really, really well. No, I don't do single track with it. I know people say, well, I do single track with my ADV bike. I mean, come on, get real. Get a real dirt bike and, talk to me when you're doing real single track. But, whatever. Anyways, to each his own. So, real quick, motor. Very good power, not crazy. What I mean by that, it's a very luggable motor. Right off idle, you can lug this thing at, third, fourth gear, real slow over obstacles, second gear, whatever. Feather the clutch. The clutch is actually very light, cable actuated clutch. Never had any problems. Not a super wild bike. I mean, it can go 160, 180 all day if you wanted to. Not my kind of thing. But I mean, passing power, sometimes you got to drop it a gear if you're fully loaded up, whatever. But I mean, it doesn't complain, right? With wheelies, there's no real accidental wheelies with the AT. I'm at 3,000 feet. So that certainly affects it, so you got to do the old preload and, clutch up on the way up, or, just clutch it if, feather the clutch if you're hard on the gas and it will come up. Kind of not too bad to keep it on balance point. Again, I'm not great at wheelies. I'm okay. So yeah, motor, ergos. Ergos were actually very decent on this bike. I found the OEM bars a little bit odd. I went to a Tusk KTM bend of all bars, and really good with 2-inch rocks risers, worked well. And then you can see that's not the stock seat. That's a seat concept rally seat. So it was a nice flat seat, lots of room to move around. So that was a very good thing. Wind protection is surprisingly good on the AT. I have a GV Shorty screen on it. I went away from the OEM one. I was quite happy with this screen. Quite good. OEM headlights. For OEM headlights as LEDs, they're really, really good. I mean, it's a shame that on 2017 it was only low beam on one light and then high beam on the two lights. But it was a very good light. I mean, I still ran Chinese spotlights off the bars and stuff like that for extra visibility and just for lighting up the ditch and such. So the lights were very good. I found the OEM chain sprocket sizing just about perfect. I oiled this chain every 600K. You can see, I mean, this is the bike, how it came right after the accident. I didn't wash it or anything like that. So this is the kind of state that the bike was typically in, right? So it saw quite a bit of dust. So yeah, so the chain and sprocket lasted 33K. I did swapped the front sprocket once it started slowly curling over just to extend that. Fuel economy. Wasn't crazy about the 19-liter tank size on the Africa Twin, but there was a couple of times where I did squeeze out close to 400K out of the tank and still have about a liter and a half left. I did always run a 4-liter Rotopax with it, so that wasn't really worried. Didn't actually really have to use it. So in mixed conditions, highway, gravel, some semi-technical riding, it still got down to about 4.5, 4.7. I think is what I ever got out of it. Really like the switchgear on the Honda. Really good positive action. I know the 2016s had some issues, I think, with the starter button. But everything was laid out well. The horn and turn signal flip upside down. That was a little bit odd. ABS switch, obviously you have to stop to turn off ABS. I do enjoy the fact that you don't have to go into menus. You just turn that on and off. So those are the pluses for me. The so-so category, I could, take it or leave it. I originally bought this bike, it was between this and a 1090R, and I went with the Honda because, I figured, well, it's going to be Honda quality, blah, blah, blah. A friend of mine, Richard, also bought one, and I rode his bone stock before I bought mine, and, it was good on gravel, and then, you got into some, fairly gnarly washboard, and then the front end couldn't keep up, the rear end couldn't keep up, and then that was stock suspension. So that was kind of meh. But once he did some work to the suspension, he did a few tweaks, the bike, really, really came alive. So, to me, it was just that. It was just my perceived Honda reliability. I've owned a couple of CBRs, 900, 600, 2 or 3 VFRs, a bunch of CBs. Yeah, so the Hondas of the 80s and the 90s, they were properly screwed together, and it was just, lasting quality. So, that's what I went with. But once I got the bike, I remember brand new, I popped the tank open, and underneath the tank, there was a bunch of tabs that were welded on. Brand new bike. Rust already coming through, that kind of thing. And it just got worse from there. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Fairings and maintenance access as a general point. This looks really, really good. No visible fittings, none of that, excellent. That's great. But when it comes down to it, there's a bunch of, surprises and gotchas and stuff like that with these fairings that you have to be really, really careful when you're peeling them off. Obviously, all the crash bars had to come off to get that done. And I think the first time I already broke one of the tabs right here when I was trying to get to the air filters that are right here. So I wasn't super thrilled about that. Actually, I wasn't thrilled about it at all. The dual air filters, yeah, I kind of see where they're coming with it. It just drives the cost up. I ended up getting some K&Ns to get around that, just to have them reusable. Battery, right there behind the little plastic thing, could have been better. The 24K valve service, 24,000 kilometers. My previous ADV was a Super Tenere. That was 40K. And accessibility, geez, there was 4 bolts and a hinge tank, and that's all she wrote. You had access at the air filter. That was, I think, the most accessible bike ever, unless you look maybe at a 790 or something like that, underneath the seat and whatnot. The 24K valve service, it's an utter pig. It took me 8 hours to do the initial. The only good thing I have to say about the 24K is finger followers on the exhaust valves and shim under bucket on the intake. Luckily, the intake was down the center, so I didn't have to use or touch the cam chain tensioner. And the exhaust, I just gave it a tweak because it's the good old, screwdriver and an 8 mil or 10 mil or whatever the hell holds the follower in place, right? So that was really easy to adjust. So that was good. That's my so-so. Now, my utter shit category. Okay. Everybody knows this. 2016, 2017, 2018, regular Africa Twins, the 45 mil forks were fucking garbage. Honda just had these laying around off a, CR or something or other, circa 1980. They just replaced the bottom yokes or the legs, put, radial calipers on them and Bob's your uncle, right? You hold the handlebar down, anything, try to hold it steady, and the wheel underneath you is going whichever way it wants to. It flexes like a motherfucker, pardon my French. That's really not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the wear on the anodizing on the lower triples, just underneath the lower triples, because the bars, or sorry, the forks flex, they wear. So before I knew all this, I actually took the forks apart, which were, they're technically non-serviceable items, meaning that the damper does not come apart, but there's much smarter people out there than me that guided me through it, and I actually disassembled it. And I have a bunch of videos on disassembly, reassembly of the forks, the revalve, all that other good stuff. And then I got springs for my weight for the front. The rear I fixed with, I don't even know where the hell it is, Attractive Extreme Rear Shock, which was actually fantastic for the rear. So, but at 8,000 kilometers, 8,000, I took the forks apart just to see how they're doing, and the oil was filthy. It was, dark metal gray, kind of the color of my truck. So that indicates anodizing wear in the actual fork. And sure enough, there was, an 1.5 inch diameter wear on both forks on the ano. So it was shot. Luckily, Honda did warranty them, mostly because of it's who you know, not what you know. We got them done through my buddy at the dealership where he works at. He got his warranty too, and fixed those. And at that point, I just kind of got fed up with it, and I dropped my load on some Öhlins. And I figured, oh yeah, that's going to fix it, right? Yeah. 48 mil forks. Fully adjustable, compression in one leg, rebound on the other. Fantastic, right? No, wrong. So, yes, the flex is gone. The valving is really decent on the Öhlins. But surprise, surprise, I took them apart after 10K of use, and the ano was gone on them too. So that was awesome. So you can actually tell they're not the, Gistastic gold Öhlins. They're just a natural anodizing color. So I had those re-anodized. I never went into the forks because that was about 7K ago. I got them re-anodized. I'm guessing they probably wore too. But the most annoying thing is if you hit a bump or you came off a wheelie and you just basically extended the fork fully, the fork would clunk because Öhlins went to lunch and forgot to finish the fork, and they never put out a top-out spring on it. So again, Richard had to go to town and sort something out, and he did do it, which was awesome. We ended up losing 1/2 inch of travel on that. But yeah, so if you're thinking of Öhlins will not fix the anodizing wear. It will fix the flex. It will not fix the anodizing wear. What else? The elephant ear turn signals. I don't have any here. I just replaced them with these Chinese pieces of shit that are bendy. The problem was with the elephant ears is I did have a spill on this bike where I dropped it fairly hard. I actually high-sided at about 45K, and the turn signal broke off. Usually in worst cases, this breaks off as well, and it's part of more shit in here that breaks, which isn't very good. So they were hideous. They were visible, but hideous. So those went. Traction control, sticky. Good Lord. Fuck Honda. Right now you can see the traction control went all the way down to 1. That's because, again, Richard made up this awesome little traction control focus selector. So now let's say if I want to go to 2, when I turn the ignition off and turn it back on, it'll drop to 2 and it'll stay there, which is awesome. If I want it right off, we're going to go to 0, turn it off. When I turn the ignition back on, it defaults back to 0. There you go. He also did a chip where it actually did the ABS as well. So that was pretty sweet. But again, pain in the ass. Got to pay for something. This is a personal... Oh, God, it was a huge annoyance of mine. These risers. Every time you went over a big bump where the handlebars got jolted, where you pushed hard on either side of the bars, these would actually move. And yeah, they're tight. I checked them several times, but it has nothing to lock against. Whereas other manufacturers, I'll talk about that later, actually have slotted pieces that go into each other and they don't move. That was a bit of an annoyance, personal thing really, but it was a pain in the ass for me. Um, Rear peg mounts, horrible location for them when you were riding. Notice the sweet Crocs. Your boot would hit in here. It was a pain in the ass. While I'm here, these pieces of shit. What were they thinking? This is the actual size. These pegs were horrible. I ended up switching out to pivot pegs. Fork well turbulence. Right, sorry. Yeah, fork well turbulence. Crap load of wind comes through here. You can see it. Still quite a few spots. But took some 1/8 puckboard and took a few tries, cut this out. Made a huge difference. So, yeah, so that's 33K, 2.5 seasons. 18, 19, 20, I don't know, almost 3 seasons. It was a very, very good bike. I enjoyed it. There was a couple of things, like I mentioned, that drove me absolutely bananas. The bike needed quite a bit of armoring also to get right. I mean, you don't have to technically do it, but that's a full rider set and alt-rider bars. And these things, these uppers basically paid for this staying intact. In the accident, I mean, this hit against the guy's truck. It obviously broke, and I mean, there was no way this was going to go anywhere. This moved a little bit, but I mean, on regular spills, tip overs, everything else like that, the bars paid for themselves. They were a little bit expensive, but I think these fairings, I forgot, they're like $280, $300 US each. So that's quite a bit of money. So yeah, so that's the AT. It's going away tomorrow. I'm hoping that the insurance company marks it down as non-repairable because it's got a quote for almost $15,000 Canadian to get this thing right, and that includes a new frame, stripping it, putting it back together, so it's automatically a write-off. So yeah, so that's the AT for you, and on to the new one. So, the hell did I replace it with? Yeah, 2019 1090R. So it's funny, I was gonna get a 790R, but couldn't find a new one or used one. They sold out, and got talking to a friend of mine that just went from a 990 to a 1090R. And he said that it's just about right for him. Mind you though, he's a 250-pound gorilla, where geez, I'm a little bit lighter than him. So that was my little bit of a concern. But the funny thing is the 1090 feels lighter. It looks taller, but it feels lighter. Just, even pushing it onto my hydraulic bench back there backwards to get it into the wheel chock with the AT, it was a nerve-wracking experience. With this one, it's quite a bit easier. So bought it new, 2019 leftover, got a really good deal on it. So the very good list. The motor, Jesus. This motor, and I just put the pipe on today, and I cleaned the unifilter intake snorkels because they were a little bit dirty. When the traction control's off and you're not paying attention, this thing will smack you in the face. Fantastic motor. Ergos. I know a lot of guys don't like the stock seats. I like the stock seat. I really don't mind it. The OEM bars had a decent bend, not great. Again, I took the Tusk bars from the AT and slapped them on. They're really good. I originally went with 2-inch risers. I felt they were a little bit tall, and they made spin turns and that kind of thing, moving the bike around a little bit harder. So I actually went back to no risers, and I went to some Rade Garage pegs out of the Czech Republic. So quite a bit bigger than stock. And right, where was I? Keep getting interrupted here again, damn it. Pegs. Yeah, so the pegs did go out for a ride today. And I mean, this thing absolutely rips now with the pipe, the unit filter. It's really, really good. I mean, compared to the AT, it's night and bloody day. And the funny thing is, there's 100cc difference. Now, motor-wise, this thing's not as luggable as the AT. Like, if you have it in third gear or fourth and you're not paying attention, you give it, a whack full of gas, it's just going to buck and it's just going to fight you. So you got to slip the clutch and then ease out of it or switch a gear, right? Again, not a big deal. It doesn't really bother me that much. Stock suspension. God almighty, thank you. 48 mil forks, fully adjustable, rebound, compression. I believe these are fully serviceable as well. So if I want to do a revalve on it, I can fairly easily. PDS shock on the back, so no linkage. Low speed and high speed compression and rebound, and hydraulic preload, which is really handy. I mean, I've tweaked it and set it on the about the 1/3 rule. I got the video with the beta, and I'm explaining that thanks to Sean's guidance, and it seems to really work. So I'm quite happy with that. This is going to be kind of odd. It's easy to clean. It's relatively easy to clean, like all the nooks and crannies. There isn't many, like the battery tray here is easy to get to. The motor is easy to get to. On the other side, there's quite a bit of swarfega and bullshit that gets flinged off the chain. But again, kind of dark. All this stuff in here is easy to get to. Yeah, so that's another big plus. Filter access. Okay, this isn't the easiest bike to filter access on. It's not a Super Tenere. It's not a 790. But just for the pre-filters, which are in here, it is 1, 2 screws. And there's another screw in here and a tiny little tab. And this panel comes off. So 3 screws and 2 small screws here. And you can pull the pre-filter out. You pull this plastic honeycomb out, clean the pre-filter, put it back in. The pre-filter, I just did a 2K trip. It was stupidly dusty. It got really dirty, right? So clean that off, not a big deal. I'm guessing the main filter, which will require the tank removal, so you have to disconnect the pump leads and both of your pump feeds, your fuel feeds, is going to be probably spotless. But again, the unit filter's in there, so I mean, any issues that they might have had with warping or anything like that will hopefully get rid of it. So, yeah, there's a few. Switch gear. The switch gear is chintzy. I mean, start-stop button is perfectly fine, not a problem. Set button sticks sometimes, and I mean, it's got all of 3000K on it. They took this setup and put it on the 1290 Super Adventure, the Adventure S, the 790, 790R. So they haven't really done anything with this. So this is kind of a disappointment, but once you're actually in the menus, they're fairly easy to navigate, so on and so forth. The pass light's good. The hazard light is well placed. Yeah, really no problems. Traction control. This is even worse than the AT. So traction control is set to the different modes. So off-road, rain, sport, and street. So typically I just ride this thing in street and off-road, both really good settings. But for the traction control to be turned off, you have to turn the bike on. You have to go into the traction control setting. I think it's called MTS. You got to hold it down for 5 seconds and it turns off. The minute you stall the bike, stall it in gear, turn off the run button, it defaults back to the default setting, which is traction control on, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. You can't get around that with the dongle. I forgot how much they cost, but again, that's 150, $200 Canadian to have to pay. So that's kind of a pain in the balls, but it is what it is. I can, for the time being, for the rest of the season, which there isn't much left, I can live with it. Valve adjustment, I believe, is 18K miles, so 30,000 kilometers. Not huge, not as good as the 10RA, but I don't think anything's as good as the 10RA as far as valve adjustments. I can live with 30,000 kilometers, not a huge problem. The utter shit category, rear cylinder heat. This is the easy bake oven of motorcycles. It gets hot. I mean, we'll see if the Leo Vinci does gives it some respite from that. I'll find out on a trip here that I'm due to take here mid-September. I may get the entire system coated in the hell porcelain. No, I forgot what the hell it was. Anyways, it's the coating. I'm sure I'll think of it the minute I finish the video. Otherwise, happy days. Yeah, so 3K on the KTM. It's treating me really well. Another thing is too is tank is 23 liters, which is good. Fuel economy is decent actually with the extra power, the extra grunt. I'm averaging on the road right around 5.1 liters to 100 kilometers, right? And that's still having some fun. That's not hanging around, riding some gravel, spinning the rear wheel, whatever. I know I should be able to drop below 5K. So theoretically, 400 kilometer tanks, which is really good. Rotopax is on the other side, which is awesome. Another nice thing is too is I went with the SW Motec racks. When they're removed, it's very, very clean. Just got a small tail pack instead of a tank bag this time around. Didn't like the weight up top. Another thing too is obviously it does not come with a skid plate. So that's the Black Dog skid plate. It's an arm and a leg plus the, I think I had to pay my right testicle in as well. Well worth it though. It's got the side stand relocation kit, stiffen things up a little bit. And I mean, it's a lifetime plate. It's not going to go anywhere. The crash guards are actually well positioned. I've tipped this thing over once on the left, once on the right, because, you know, I got mad skills. With the handguards, they protect everything well. The OEM handguards are a joke. So if you want to actually save your levers and make it home, get rid of them. The Pro Bend ones are not cheap, but they give you tons of room to clear all the gubbins here, right? So they're quite long, which is nice. And then again, I was bitching and moaning about the AT, not the triples moving. See how these ones are actually slotted in? These will never move. So happy days. Otherwise, that's all I got. Might report back once I have some more miles on the 1090. Like I said, one thing I forgot to mention was the tubes on the Africa Twin. So the regulars, I think still on 2020, come with tubes. The Adventure Sport, I think, comes tubeless now, finally. But I did have an Audex kit from day one on it. So yeah, 33K on the front. The front rim does not have the ridge on it. I never air down. I've never had issues with the Audex. The rear was basically in really good shape. I think I got some pictures of it on Flickr. I can share them. So yeah, so really no issues there. So I mean, if you're kind of adverse to tubes like I was, the Audex is a very good choice, or 3M tape, whatever floats your boat. So there is ways around it. Not ideal, but it is what it is. Last but not least, the toolkit that came with the Honda, just an absolute travesty. Like, it was a screwdriver, that was a flat plate, and a Phillips. And I think it came with one Allen key. The Orange Donkey here came with everything, including pliers, bottle cap opener, even came with axle wrenches and extensions to actually service the bike. And you can actually do that, right? Which is nice. I mean, these are about the same price point, or were, or whatever the case may be. So I don't know why the hell, Honda can't, do what these assholes do for the same price. I mean, maybe they cut corners somewhere else. Yeah, the switchgear is probably one of them. But yeah, they're in the same price bracket. It's not like this one's $3,000 cheaper than this one. They were within $500 of each other back in 2017, and I think even now they are right around there. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say about it. Final word. If I had to do it again, which one would I go with? I'd go with that one because it suits my riding style a little bit better. You get the good components as standard from KTM. Suspension to me is very important. You don't really have to fiddle with it too much to start with. The OEM crash bars are nice. Sure, you don't have a skid plate. The AT came with a tin can skid plate. I wouldn't trust it anyway, so out it went. So I think the KTM has a distinct advantage. Again, for me, if it were to choose, it would be with the orange bike. But I mean, if you're more into the road stuff, the new Hondas come with the traction control, which is really nice. I think they went way overboard with the electronics, with the buttons and everything else like that. It looks retarded in my mind. So I mean, they made strides in some of the good direction, but to me, still on 45 mil forks. The power is not where it needs to be. In comparison to the orange one. Yeah. So if you're more leaning towards road, go with the Honda. If you're going more off road and want a little bit more grin factor, go with that one. So yeah, again, thanks for watching.